Holy Smokes family, this is Christian Smith. I'm the host and the heretic of Holy Smokes Cigars and Spirituality. And I'm excited today because we're announcing the launch of the Holy Smokes Cigar Club. Here's how you sign up. If you go to patreon.com/TFCATL, there's a Holy Smoke Cigar Club sign up where for $20 a month, you can get access to all of our visual footage. And you can be a part of our live studio audience every single month. You can provide feedback. You can tell us what episodes you want us to film in the future. And then the most important piece, every single month, you're going to get a Holy Smokes branded cigar in your mailbox directly from us. It's just $20 a month. You're getting way more than what you paid for, and it's going to go so far in helping us to continue to create content just like this, because that's what we do. Disruptive, faith-based content for the everyday person. So listen, go sign up. Holy Smoke Cigar Club, patreon.com/TFCATL, and start getting your own Holy Smoke cigar in the mail every single month. We hope to see you there. Looking forward to it.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Holy Smoke Cigars and Spirituality. The pre-show has been lit. Y'all forgive me. I'm trying to bring myself together from all the laughter. Um Shout out to everybody that's either listening or watching. For those in our live virtual audience, our patrons on Patreon, thank you so much. Everybody on the podcast platforms and our family over at Fam Radio. We're in for a great episode today. I got two of my homies with me today. We have a pretty big cast of about 8 people. These two gentlemen here with me today are two of my dearest friends. So I'm really excited about today. We got the Kingmaker and we have the Mystic. So if this is your first time engaging Holy Smokes, we make disruptive, faith-based content for the everyday person. So we try to keep it as accessible as possible, but we're going to get deep into some controversial topics. Today, of course, is always controversial because we're talking about biblical interpretation and the meaning of things and how you read it in your cultural lens. And that's all based on the book that the Kingmaker wrote, The Business in the Bible. So, one thing, yeah, make sure you order The Business in the Bible at www.thekingmakersclub.com. By the end of this show, I'm sure you will really want to get it. So make sure you go check that out. So at Holy Smokes, we have one rule. One rule. That's it. The one rule at Holy Smokes is that we respect and honor each other's lived experience. So our one rule is rooted in Greatest Commandment Theology. It's a brand of theology that I've curated over the past few years, and it says simply this: that your love for God is displayed through how you love your neighbor, which is an extension of how you love yourself. Therefore, you can't fully love God if you don't love your neighbor, and you can't fully love your neighbor if you don't love yourself. According to Jesus, everything hinges on that, and we consider ourselves to be Jesus followers. So we try to make everything about that commandment. Now, what we do here at Holy Smokes is we try to monitor people's language. If you have listened or watched any of our episodes, you know we're not talking about profanity because we might cuss from time to time, but we try to monitor big words. And I have two of the main culprits who use big words on the cast today. So we have a mechanism called the dollar jar that will check people when they use a big word that they don't define. So anytime somebody uses a dollar jar word, you are going to get this indicator right here. That's going to let you know they say it's something that they need to define. Now, we also added a little piece to this because, we have some great people on here who give great insight, and sometimes they just have mic drop moments. So whenever somebody says something really, really powerful or really, really insightful, you're going to get these air horns right here. That's my favorite. I got one on the last episode and I was so proud. I was so proud when I got the air horns. So that's when you have a mic drop moment, you're going to get the air horns. Okay, so let's go ahead and move forward. We're going to do our introductions. And today, for our introductions, this is what I want everybody to answer because we're talking about the business in the Bible today. And Curvance is going to go into some details about that. So, for your introduction, I want you to tell us your name, what are you smoking, what are you drinking, and then who is your favorite Bible character and what was their profession? If you're in the virtual audience, put it in the comments too. Who was your favorite Bible character and what was their profession? I'll go first. I'm smoking a Tabac Especial, one of my favorites right here. I'm drinking a French Connection made at the house. A French Connection consists of cognac and Grand Marnier. And my favorite Bible character, I don't have one that's consistent. Like, it's just whatever I'm feeling in the moment. And right now, the person that came to mind is Tamar. Tamar is my favorite Bible character at the moment. And her profession, she started out, as a housewife, which most women in the biblical text were. Thank God for progression. Nothing against housewives, but I think you should have the choice of whether or not you want to be a housewife. So thank God for progression. But she actually went into undercover sex work, which was a pretty powerful move because she wound up being a predecessor of Jesus Christ because she went into the undercover sex work game. So I'm not promoting sex work. I'm just stating the reality that had she not done it, that probably would have kept her out of the lineage of Jesus. That's all I'm saying. You do with that what you please. Is just biblical information. Do with it what you will. All right. We gonna go on to the Kingmaker. It's his day. Kingmaker, smoking, drinking, favorite Bible character. What was their profession?
I want to start with my Spanish in honor of you. I want to start by saying Rey Gran Candiña. I think I said that right in Spanish. That is King Big Chain.
Why? Why?
I'm sorry, it's an inside joke. I'm sorry, you guys. If you were a patron of Patreon, you'll be backstage and you would understand everything that's going on. I am the Kingmaker. Um, I am excited to be here and honored that I have an opportunity on my dearest friend's platform to talk about my book. I am on second stick because the behind the scenes pre-show was amazing. So I'm smoking a La Roma de Cuba El Jefe, and I'm navigating back and forth between 1792 and Crown Royal XO. And I don't have a consistent favorite character. But right now, my favorite character as of right now is going to be Nehemiah. Nehemiah is an executive chef. He operates the kitchen. And because of his marketplace job, he was able to identify his lifetime purpose and to get from being effective in the marketplace is what maximized his call to ministry. And through that platform, he was able to walk away from what he did every day, identify what he was called to do for the rest of his days, and then change the days of people who would never encounter him now, henceforth, and forevermore. So that's my perspective.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. It's going down in the chat, man. It's going down in the
What
chat.
is happening in the chat? Do you see this? I'm being offered up like a drink offer. That's all right. I can handle it all. Hit them DMs. Go ahead. Go ahead. Hit the DM. You'll get a response this evening.
All right, my
Folks, my name is Myron Randall. They call me the mystic around here just because I say some real spiritual stuff. I am smoking my favorite quarantine stick. I found out about this during the quarantine. It's called a Cuban Round, a taste of Havana. I don't think it's actually made in Cuba. I think it's made here in the States. They just advertise in Cuba, but it's one of my favorites. Good price on these bad boys. A Cuban Round. Get you one of these. Get you one of these. I'm not drinking anything tonight. I've just got some water because I'm going to drink during the debate. Marielle has a drinking game going during the debate, and so I'm participating. And so I don't want to, be too toe up, 3 sheets to the wind here in the debate. And my favorite Bible character that had a tent maker's job, but he wasn't a tent maker, is Dr. Luke. Luke wrote the book of Luke, and then he comes back and writes the sequel, the book of Acts, but he is a doctor, but he's also a gospel writer. And that's my favorite. Did I cover all the questions there?
Yes, sir, you did.
Yeah, we got all the vibes going here tonight. Got all the vibes. I've been trying to get outside for a long time and smoke with y'all, and so I finally made it.
Myron got the taco meat killing them.
So you see it.
Y'all not ready for it today.
Yeah, yes, indeed. It's softer than a bearskin rug, my nigga. Can I say that on the radio?
You already did. You already did.
Hey, man, you've already said it, bro. This is going to be the most interesting holy smokes we've seen in a long time. The ratings are going up tonight. I promise you.
That is. That is.
Oh, my God. So since we're in that vein already, we started a new segment this season, the cigar. Well, it was Tiger's Cigar Tip of the Week, and it's also been the Kingmaker's Cigar Club, and it's also been Myron's Cigar Moment. So for the night,
it is not what it is. That's what it is right now.
That's what it is right now. I'm doing it.
Yeah, just right now, today. That's all.
This is Myron's Cigar Moment, folks. I'm glad you tuned in once again. I'm glad you came back to hear a little bit about smoking cigars. Let me tell you, one of my favorite things about smoking cigars is the ritual. And the greatest ritual of cigar smoking is lighting your cigar. And you can use many different things to light your cigar. You can use matches. As a matter of fact, I've got some matches here made by Davidoff, which is a wonderful cigar maker. Those are actually longer than your regular matches, so you can light your cigar. But my favorite way to light a cigar is using a cigar torch. I love cigar torches. I love cigar torches so much so that I've given every member of our cast one almost. And so I bought a few of my collection to show you some of the possibilities that you have in lighting your cigar. So I've got this wonderful cigar torch by Zyko. Absolutely beautiful. Fits right in the palm of your hand. A classic torch that is Tiffany's blue, not made by Tiffany's, just Tiffany's blue. Beautiful cigar lighter. This one made to fit in your cigar pouch, shaped just like a cigar. I don't know who this one is made by. Apparently not made very well. Then I've got my absolute favorite, that is this nickel-plated one made by Zyko as well. Beautiful cigar lighter. So you can get something that you like in order to light your cigar so that you can take part in one of the greatest rituals there is as it relates to smoking your cigar, and that's lighting your cigar. So personalize your cigar moment, get a very cool lighter, and enjoy smoking your cigar. That's Myron's Cigar Moment.
Was that the tip, Doc? Well, I didn't get the tip because that just looks like you were showing off your cigar lights. That's all it looked like.
Personalize your cigar, that end part.
Just say that, Doc. Just say, this is why you can't keep this segment, because you just showing off. It's not you want a tip. That wasn't not.
And I'd even show them all. I got some more here that I could have shown too.
I still haven't got the
blue compact one here, and then I got this other nickel-plated one here that I just want to. You brought that up. Thank you for giving me carte blanche to show off the others.
Hey, Mary, did he hit you for a carte blanche?
Carte blanche. Tonight, I'm glad he did it. You deserve it.
Don't worry. You know what? It's a dollar I can afford, because that's the word that people need to know. Carte blanche.
Yo, I don't know if y'all saw what Marielle said. She said, "This right here's a penny dropper."
Hey, Y'all just toss them on stage here, folks. Toss them
Hey
on
man,
stage.
they want to know what carte blanche. What does carte blanche mean, man?
Right? Is your prerogative, essentially. Carte blanche is your prerogative.
All right. All right. This is so much fun already. So today's episode is about the business in the
Thank you,
Bible.
folks.
It's a book by the Kingmaker himself. This is it right here. The business in the Bible. Let me see. There we go. You got to get a copy of the business in the Bible. And I wouldn't do it justice to try to give a synopsis when we have the author right here. So I'm going to have the Kingmaker just give us a synopsis real quick, and then we'll get into some discussion centered around the book. Kingmaker, you got it.
Man, I'm thankful again. Thank you for the opportunity to have amazing friends. Behind this book is connected to the fact that I've been intrigued over a number of years about the effect of culture on perspective. And when you start to realize that your environment, the one that you grow up in and develop, has the greatest impact on how you see and process things, thoughts, and people, you'll start to realize that it shapes pretty much your belief system. This reality is often taken an immense amount of two ingredients to shift. Openness and fearlessness are the only things that alter or even help us attempt to change. Without these two ingredients, perspectives are often jaded for the long term, and bias is immediately adapted as the norm. And as generations have become more intellectual and people have become more accepting of changing points of view, we have a group of people that I call the culturally paralyzed, that reject any concept or thought process that is different from their own. The best example I can give you for this perspective is being able to see a six drawn in the sand. And when you see a six drawn in the sand, you have to realize that based off of what angle you approach it from, it will give it a different perspective. If you approached it from one side, you'll see a six. If you approached it from another side, you would see a nine. The challenge is, and the biggest obstacle would be to disregard the other person's point of view. And this is what we do so many times in the church because we don't consider that our connections in one or more spaces in our lives force us to be connected in relationships with people who fit our culture. So the people that you choose to invite into your circle of influence, the political stances that you now embrace, the values you ascribe to, and the mindset that you have now embodied is predominantly a result of your culture. So our connections can adjust or change by adding a variable of personal willingness to engage those who we have never engaged in the past. So consider the following two statements. Based on Mariah's lack of experience in a political area, she comes off extremely green to local politics. Second statement, Mariah vehemently disdained Kenya's promotion. She was visibly green with envy. These two statements incorporate the word green. The definitive truth can be altered by the context of the statement. The use of green in the first sentence conveys immaturity or naivete, while the same word used in a different context in the second sentence expresses a toxic emotion. But the truth is, the most common definition of green is an additive color created by two primary colors, yellow and blue. This is how the mass majority of people would identify the word green. And the challenge here is we've overlooked, we've minimized, and we have totally given no context to how our context, our connections, and how our communication shifts everything. Imagine growing up in a culture context where the word green only relates to the color wheel. How confusing, absurd, and unorthodox would the first two sentences be if your perspective of context was limited to the color wheel? And unfortunately, without taking time to read the context clues and opening your thinking beyond your cultural teachings, you would immediately cancel out any new knowledge of a familiar word as a result of your unwillingness to change your context. So context is key. The way you communicate is key. And also how you find yourself connected. This was the impetus behind the whole book. Because when I started thinking about how we mismanage our context based off of our unwillingness to change, and the fact that we never give people in a different context the same grace, the same mulligans that we give our inner circle, it has minimized our impact on people who don't speak like us with a Bible that is supposed to be free to all, global, and impactful to many. And this starts the dynamic of why I wrote The Business in the Bible, because so many of us have never taken the opportunity to look at it from a different point of view, never been in a comfortable place to realize that the means by which we've communicated in the past affect our ability to adjust our communication in the future, thereby minimizing anybody coming into our lives and hearing what God is saying now, henceforth, and forevermore. So openness and fearlessness is challenging us. And if we can get that mindset, if you can understand that scenario and that example, it gives you the opportunity to see the business in the Bible in a lens you've never thought about it before.
Whew, that was wonderful, man.
I did not know we was gonna get a message tonight.
That was wonderful.
Should we open up the doors of the church, or I feel like we have been blessed on tonight. Listen, there may be one here tonight who does not know the Lord Jesus Christ as your Savior.
Come on.
You may come on your Christian experience, you may come by letter, or you may come as a candidate for baptism. Come now. Marielle, sing us a song so we this is your time. Yo, yeah, so as you can see, you need to get the book. So there's something that I wanted to actually kind of play on with what you were talking about, that whole cultural context and how your lens shapes how you see the Bible and how it frames just how you interpret the Bible. So I got a question. I want to hear what Myron has to say about this. Myron, can you think of a Bible story that when it was taught to you, it was shaped through your cultural lens, and you later realized, oh, that was a cultural perspective on that story, but like there's really more to it when I look at it from a different perspective? Can you think of a Bible story, Myron?
Yeah, of course I can. But before I get into that Bible story, I've got to tell you, I just had this thought while the Kingmaker was talking, how systematically sound that idea is of perspective. There is a conservative theologian by the name of John Frame, and we don't give many conservative theologians play on this show, right? But John Frame has this concept called perspectivalism, where he talks about that the appropriate way to approach systematic theology is through looking at various perspectives, and that nobody owns a perspective that is theirs by themselves. That if you've got a perspective, I need to look at your perspective and you need to look at my perspective, so that ultimately we can see it from both sides and then come to the truth, which is in the middle of it. So that was wonderful. That was phenomenal, especially when you gave that example of the 6 and the 9 and you know, but all right, that's not what we're here talking about.
No, I agree with you though. And I want to say, like, that's the root of our one rule, right?
Mm-hmm.
That you have to be able to understand that people have different perspectives based on their lived experience. So it all ties in.
Listen, I love it. I absolutely love it. First off, and also I want to say, you know, I'm a bit of a distraction. I got this shirt undone here. I don't, you know, it's a beautiful night, folks. It's a beautiful night.
The weather is nice.
The weather is nice. You know, I got a wind blowing from the southeast. You know, so I figured why not go outside and just have a good time. So I've read the Business in the Bible as a book, and I was privileged to kind of read it when it was in its infancy as you were putting together the manuscript, and it's a phenomenal book. So folks, I encourage you, please get the book. I had never thought of the Bible in that way as a business plan, as God's business plan, until Curvance began to kind of enumerate that topic, to discuss it. Enumerate means to discuss it and share it with us. I defined it.
Yeah, you was kind of late on the draw with that one though. Like
I'm $2 in.
You said it because, like, when you said perspectivalism, you intended to define it, and you like you flow, but you said, what did you say? Enumerate? Is that what you just? And he's like, oh yeah, I need to define it. So yeah.
All right. Okay.
You $2 in tonight, brother.
Oh my gosh. But let me just tell my Bible story. I always appreciated the story of David dancing when the Ark of the Covenant came back. And we used that in my church as a license to dance all over the church. I never forget, I had invited a young lady to church. Her name was Tiffany Stewart. Shout out to you, Tiffany. Now, I wasn't interested in Tiffany. I was interested in her friend. And I intentionally invited Tiffany so she could tell her friend how cool I was. And so I said, you know, maybe we'll be good here at church. Maybe we'll have a nice solemn service that's really impactful. But no, somewhere in the middle of the service, they hit that F sharp. And if you've been into a Black Baptist church, they hit that right key. And the old ladies, the mothers just kind of jerk a little bit and get up. And the pastor got on the mic and said, and David danced before the Lord. And I'll become even more undignified than this. And sure enough, it set the church on fire. And they danced for the rest of the service that night. And Tiffany just watched it all. She just watched it all. She didn't see this shirt. I wish I owned this shirt back then. It would have been a different story. But that was that. It was shaped our culture. That was what we did in church, that we danced. So when I went to college and I went to a church that was more solemn and did not dance like that, I thought they were crazy, because David danced before the Lord. And so this is what you're supposed to do in church. And that was based on culture, that this is what church was supposed to look like. But there are different perspectives on how we worship God, and we're supposed to appreciate all of those perspectives and not just pigeonhole ourselves to one. So I feel like that was a very long answer to that question.
No, that was great. No, that was great. I mean, you're telling the story, so it's going to be hard to keep it like at 30 seconds or less. For me, mine is a little bit more solemn, I guess. I don't know. So I think about the Black experience and how we latch on to these stories about coming out, about liberation. So of course, we focus on the Exodus story, the children of Israel. We focus on Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace, and Daniel in the lion's den, and Jonah in the belly of the fish, and all of these different things. But one thing that I missed, because when we talk about the Battle of Jericho, we always look at that from the perspective of the Israelites who were going in to seize the promised land. Like, this is what God has promised us, and we're going in here to get it because our enemies are in there and they're trying to keep us from getting what we have. And I always would, get excited about the walls coming down. We sang a song in my church, Joshua fit the Battle of Jericho, and the walls came a tumbling, walls came a tumbling, walls came a tumbling down. Like, that was the whole vibe, right? And then I heard somebody tell me a Native American perspective on that story, and it blew my mind, because I always thought, we got to go in and get what God has for us. And Joshua and the children of Israel, they went into Jericho because that's what God had for them. And then I was sitting in a class, and my professor said, take a look at this article written by this Native American. And the Native American said, when I see that story, I identify more with the people inside the walls than I do the
Mhm.
Israelites outside the walls. He said, because as a Native American, it was the Europeans who came here and tore down our walls and committed genocide against us. So I can't shout about the walls coming down because the people inside of Jericho were nonviolent. They weren't actively aggressive towards the children of Israel. They were just staying inside of their homes. So I thought about how I was always told that story and the way I pictured it. I pictured it like, the people inside were like ready for a fight. Like they were trying to kill the Israelites. And I identified with the Israelites. And then I heard that Native American say that. And I said, oh, snap. Like this was genocide. And I've been shouting over it for a long time without any context. So that was one that really, really got me. Ross, you got a story?
Truth be told, I have two. The two that stand out to me, number one, is the circumstance around Lot, Sodom, and Gomorrah. Because when we think about the story of Lot, Sodom, and Gomorrah, many of us connect the sin of Sodom to homosexuality. We've
Mhm.
talked about sodomy. We talked about this individual who has a house and he has angels as guests. And the men of Sodom are coming to seemingly sleep with, in a Q plus lens, angels. But because of our Western lens, we have highlighted homosexuality simply because we are uncomfortable with truth and we've connected it to Sodom. We use the word sodomy when in all reality, you can sodomize somebody and be heterosexual. But the flip side of this is if you see homosexuality, but you don't see a man offering his virgin daughters up to be gang raped, there's a whole different dynamic. And the truth of it is, the Bible highlights in Ezekiel chapter 16, read it when you get a chance. I think it's verse 48 through 50, the sins of Sodom. And it wasn't homosexuality. The sins were the fact that they lived in the lap of luxury. I like how Eugene Peterson says it. He says that they were proud, they were gluttonous, and they were lazy. And the real sin that they had is that they ignored the oppressed and the poor. So that's my first one that's cultural. The second one is this whole dynamic of Moses freeing the children of Israel from the bondage and hand of Pharaoh. My challenge, and I say this all the time, the Bible reads differently when you're winning. I don't know if you heard what I said. The Bible reads differently when you're winning. So when you start winning and you hear that in context, the state of Georgia had an uprising, and I say this in no disrespect of all Hispanics and all Mexicans, and they believe that God told them they no longer have to build houses, they no longer have to hang out at Home Depot, they no longer have to work for John Wheeler. And now, because God has freed them, on Monday, they're going to go to the governor and tell the governor that we out of here. And everybody that's the top 1% of wealth in Georgia needs to go in their safe deposit box and take out 10% and give it to them because they're getting ready to leave and head home. That only works when you're oppressed. That passage of scripture won't preach to a white congregation or a wealthy congregation. It only preaches to an individual who's been oppressed. And from that oppressive lens, you have a cultural lens that says it's okay to leave. But for the people who are doing the building, doing the cultivating, this is a nightmare scripture because now all of my work is leaving and you're asking me to pay them because God said so. It's a different lens based off of your culture and your perspective.
Sir, you talking so good. and the audience is just going in. I don't know what's wrong with the virtual audience tonight. Like, we need to pray over them.
I mean, I would say get them some oil, but they might take that the wrong way. I don't know what's happening here today. It's not what y'all got to behave,
or not,
or not. You know, your prerogative. Y'all have carte blanche on what you want to do.
Yeah, you can use it now because you defined it.
Yes.
So Kingmaker, earlier when you were talking, Ariana and the audience asked a question, because you've talked in the past about how when you started your business, you went to churches because you really had a heart to help churches, and you came from a business background, understanding that church is just as much business as it is spiritual, which really is a major part of what this book is about, helping people to understand the business strategies in the Bible. So you went to these different churches saying, hey, I want to help with your organizational structure and your marketing and your strategic development. And they doubted you and they just said, nah, I don't need that. I'm good with what I'm doing. Well, Ariana, remember hearing you say that on another broadcast. And her question is, like, have people changed their response to you now?
Well, I realize that credibility changes communication. When you're credible on a particular platform, people communicate your words differently when they didn't see you on that platform. The question to answer for Ariana is, did they change? They changed out of necessity, not out of willingness. So what does that mean? The greatest thing that happened to me from a business and ministry perspective has been COVID-19, because I believe that God did not create it, but God permitted it. I call it his permissive will, is what theologians would analyze it as. And for 8 years, I talked about marketing, which for a long time was a curse word because people thought marketing was connected to the secular world. Literally, in 4 words, marketing is the psychology of satisfaction. It's the way that you get into the minds and the hearts of the person that you're trying to target and figure out what they need before they need it. And then they don't recognize they need it until you told them that they needed it. It is actually biblical. I think it is in the book of Proverbs, where you hear either Moses, Solomon, or Amenetes state that as a man thinketh, and most people confuse this passage. It's not as a man thinketh, so is he. It says as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And the best analogy for that is the mind and the heart don't really do any dynamic thinking, because your heart doesn't think. From your heart is where your emotions and your reality come. But what he's really trying to say is that as a man thinks, that's your psychology. In his heart, that is your cardiology. So is he, that's your anthropology. So what he's trying to say is what you think is what you believe. In your heart is how you behave. So is he, is what you become. And the problem is many of us in church don't know who we're targeting. We have mixed up the concept that the gospel is free to all, but our message is specific to some. Because what you say at the faith community is for a specific group of people. What I say at New Birth is for a specific group of people. What TD Jake says at the Potter's House is for a specific group of people. And if you don't understand what kingdoms you speak to, how to market to those individuals, and then from a branding standpoint, a brand is an encounter based off of information with or experiences about a particular entity or line of products. So if people have the wrong information about you, they have a horrible experience with your church, your brand is not what you said it was. It's what the other people said it was. And it's unfortunate that branding is the process of creating that heart and mind component. So do churches do it? No, because we're quick to figure out who somebody else is and simply try to duplicate their psychology, realizing that what God has called us to is to be authentics, not Xerox copies. And you can quickly figure out that most preachers sound like another preacher that you've heard because they are living somebody else's purpose, never identifying their own, and never marketing to the psychology of people that God has called them to reach. So they minimize their impact, maximize their headache, and then count out all the people that they've been designed to reach because they don't know the business in the Bible.
Boy, that deserved a mic drop. That
Getting all the mic
deserved it.
drops.
My gosh, man, that was so good. I keep thinking about in the Bible when Paul says that I must be all things to all men that I might win some, right? He talks about shifting to become who he is so that he can be specific and reach the people that he's supposed to be reaching, right? I'll never forget, I had a mentor. Her name is Donna King. She's deceased now, so God rest Donna King's soul. I was having trouble evangelizing to this person. And I went to Donna and I said, Donna, I don't know what to do. I've told them everything I can do, or told them everything I could tell them to win them over to Christ. And Donna looked at me and said, oh, baby, that's just your orange. And I said, oh, what just my orange? And then she said this to me. She said, well, Jesus said, and she was an older lady. She said, Jesus said, you are the salt of the earth. And you've got to realize that some people are your potatoes and some people are your oranges. She said, an orange never needs salt, but a potato, any way you prepare it, needs salt. And so this person that you're talking to is just your orange. So move on till you find the potato that you can add your savoring and your seasoning to and ultimately win them. I think that's exactly what you're talking about. It's this idea that God has called you to a specific group of people. And if you operate outside your sphere of influence, you won't reach those people that God has called you to reach.
Can we get some air horns on?
Well, thank you. I didn't know that deserved air horns, but okay.
Absolutely. You guys are so insightful. I love it. I love what's happening tonight. Ross, you said something that was key, right? Like, and I'll just kind of echo that. We do it in our pastoring, we do it in our preaching. I believe that most preachers do not say anything new. We just find creative ways to regurgitate what we've always heard. And I believe our calling is to hear the voice of God as God speaks to us and say what God is saying to us. And we need to have a foundation. Next episode, we'll talk about breaking all the rules. So I'll get into that a little bit more. So we need to have a foundation, but we got to stop just regurgitating everything we hear. We get excited over preaching that says nothing new. Like, I remember when I was a young preacher and I preached a message. It was about psychology, actually. And I talked about some different like mental disorders and how they play out spiritually. And somebody came up to me after the message had ended and they said, oh, that message was so good. Oh, that was so great. So insightful. You really blessed my soul. But, you didn't take it to the cross. You didn't take it to the cross. Like, you got to take it to the cross at the end. And I'm like, I'm talking about like personality disorders. Why do I need to take it to the cross when I'm talking about personality disorders? So we just we do the same thing with the marketing and branding of our churches. Like, we just try to copy off what somebody else did. So when somebody tries to help us do what is unique to us to operate in our purpose, oh nah, I just want to do what they did over there at New Birth. I just want to do what they did over there at the Potter's House. I just want to do what they did over there at that popular church. Like, give me that. It's the same way with me in clothing. Everybody's like this. It's not just the church. I get people all the time. I'm a custom clothier, which means I can design a look specifically for you, your personality, your sense of style, your name, your colors, all of that stuff. And people come to me and say, make me the same thing you made that person. Why? You're not shopping off the rack. I can make you something specific for you. So I think we have to move beyond just trying to do what everybody else did and find our lane, find our purpose, and make sure we do what God has called us to do. And a lot of times we run from the concept of marketing because it seems sacrilegious. Like we shouldn't discuss business and ministry in the same breath. And I'm curious, how has marketing been discussed, or has it even been discussed in the churches that you two or have been a part of? And like, how has that shaped your perspective on marketing and ministry? Myron, you got any thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. Right. So it's been skirted. The topic has been kind of skirted. We'll talk about marketing around Christmas because we want to fill up the pews. We'll talk about marketing around Easter because we want to fill up the pews. But really, it's not a conversation that we have. We just believe that we've got something that people need. And so they're going to discover us and they're just going to come to us. But you know what? The world needs food. But every food vendor advertises the food that they have. So that, because there's a specificity that can touch a certain taste bud that will ultimately quench the need for somebody who wants that specific type of food. But rarely did we talk about marketing, only at specific times when we knew the marketing would benefit us as opposed to getting our message out to benefit others.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Kingmaker, you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm biased to this simply because one of the marketplace expertise areas for me is marketing. That's my undergrad and my MBA. I own a marketing and strategic development firm. And for now almost 14 years, that's what I've been doing. And the last 8 years, I've been doing it on a major scale. And it's interesting that I would go into churches, tell them about marketing and honing in on your target and making sure that you are
Hold up,
unique.
man. Hold up, man. Tell them some of your clients, man. Tell them who you done work for, brother.
Oh, man, we've covered the major corporations, small business, government, nonprofit, faith-based, education, entertainment. Everybody from McDonald's to some of your major colleges and institutions, some of your major small businesses, almost every major church that you can think of in the African American context in the United States, and even P Squared and the faith community. And the interesting dynamic is until we fall in a crisis, do people consider being authentic to themselves? That's a problem for me because God doesn't need a crisis for you to be authentic. So over these last several years, what I realized is since the 60s, the world, politics, music, economy, and business have shifted with the times, and the church has stayed stagnant. And it's unfortunate that we are now at MP5s and downloads, and the church, because they don't understand their market and are not clear on their brand, are still doing 8 tracks, still doing 45s. And it is a problem because we have condemned the platform that God has called us to market to the uttermost parts of the world, not because God didn't identify it as a mechanism to reach. It's because we never took the time to do the work to narrow down our target and minister. Understanding that Rolls Royce doesn't have commercials on TV. Bentley does not have commercials on radio. That's not that Honda, Toyota, and Ford are doing it the wrong way. But Bentley and Rolls Royce knows that their target is not on TV and not on the radio. And it's crazy that the world embraces it. The church rejects it and Jesus promotes it. So no, we are not focused on our marketing, our branding. We minimize it to capital stewardship campaigns, raising money and coercing people to join our church, but we don't do anything beyond that dynamic.
Absolutely. A lot of times we look at somebody who works in a different space and we judge them as if like they're not on our level, right? And that's just the worst way to look at it, because you have to have a target market. Like I've had people, again, I do custom clothing, so some people come to me and say like K&G ain't about nothing. K&G is a discount clothing provider. They make suits for men and they do some stuff for women too. But a lot of guys go get their suits from K&G. I'm never going to knock K&G because there's a target
Mhm.
market for K&G.
Yep.
My market is much smaller, and the owners of K&G have been wildly successful at doing what they do. I would love to have their money. Like I'm doing okay with my business, but I am nowhere near where the owners of K&G are, because they have tapped into their market and they do it well. They give the people in their market exactly what they're looking for. Pamela had a great question that I think we should tackle before we wrap this up. She asked, what's the fear in identifying a target market? Because a lot of ministers say this word is for everybody. So Kingmaker, I want to kick that back to you real quick. What is people's fear with identifying a target market? And then Myron, whatever thoughts you have, I want to hear yours too.
The biggest fear is that I've got to look at myself. And preaching is one of the few places where you can ignore yourself, look at a different template, and then make people believe that it's you. I help people to understand that your purpose is that one thing that you've been designed to do, that if you don't get it done, it won't get done. It's unique to you, but it creates vehicles to drive to your target. So your vehicle is not the mandatory and it is not the purpose. It's just the mechanism that drives you to your target. But most preachers make the vehicle bigger than the driver. I can buy my daughter a vehicle, but she's not capable and clear enough to drive the vehicle that I've given her. And really, many of us in the preaching world are driving something that we're not capable to manage because we've never identified our capability as drivers. And the challenge forces us to be authentic. The challenge forces us to realize that we're going to reach people that nobody else has reached before. And because we have to create something, it causes us fear, which truthfully allows us as preachers to understand that we are more fearful of God's process. So we'll offer up man's plan to override God's process. God is a creator. He does everything uniquely. So we preach about a God that we don't want to be like. We don't want to create anything. We don't want to do no work. We don't want to be misunderstood. We don't want to create a process that people have to buy into and force us to look within. Why? Because that causes us to work. So what I want to do is take your message, take your theology, take your point of view, take your marketing, take your platform, and then duplicate it because you've already gone to the cross. Don't crucify me. I don't want the crucifixion. I just want the glory. And with that challenge, it forces us to never be authentic to our target market because it forces us to be authentic to ourselves.
That's so
And
good.
y'all, this is all based on the business in the Bible. Again, if you haven't gotten the book, you need to get it. You need to get it. I'm telling you.
It's so
Myron, what you got, man?
I'm thinking about that same question. And for me, I think it's a scarcity mentality that often we think that if I become who I really am, nobody will be interested in what I have to offer. But really, there are people who are interested in what you have to offer. God has designed people that are interested in what you have. You know what it is? It's the difference between a river and a flood. If you think about it, a river has creative properties, but a flood has chaotic properties. Right? If you think about a river formed the Grand Canyon, right? It hit and it continued to flow and it made something. But a flood created the chaos that is known as Hurricane Katrina. And so because we operate in a scarcity mentality, we think, I'm just going to cover all the bases. And we end up being Hurricane Katrina, when we should be the Grand Canyon. Right, thank y'all. This is all right. I appreciate it.
Let's get a benediction right now.
This is business in the Bible, folks.
Let's just get a benediction right now.
Now unto him and him alone who is able to keep us from falling and present us faultless before the throne.
Oh, were you done? Because I don't want to cut you off.
That was it. That was all. I mean, I could toss it back to Ross here, because in chapter 4 in his book, he talks about speaking in tongues and this idea that God gives us the gift to speak the language, and that language is the language that we need to speak. Yeah.
Ross, you want to say something on that before we start to close this up?
Yeah, that was a big challenge. I vacillated. Vacillated means that I went back and forth. A multiplicity means more than one time. No, sir, you're not going to do it to me. You're not going to do it to me. You're not going to do it to me. I explained it, sir. I explained it right on the book. No, not going to do it. I went back and forth.
It's a multiplicity. There was several in there, sir.
And I explained it. I did a good job of explaining it. The challenge here is, and no disregard to people who see speaking in tongues just as a spiritual component. It is a personal gift in the most part that allows you to speak to God one-on-one. There is a component of it that is public, that has a translation component to it. There are Greek terms that allow us to understand the difference between the two. But one of the ones that we overlook because we've thrown away the marketplace component is the fact that speaking in tongues is more practical than it is spiritual. Consider the individual Daniel. Daniel is a government official. He's a political advisor. He is what many people would see from a government standpoint as a leader of multiple government teams. He's a chief operating officer in government. When he gets to Belshazzar in the book of Daniel, Belshazzar is having a party. He is using his professional government authority to minimize the church. He holds up the Bible in front of a church that he doesn't go to. He makes people bow to his name by putting his name on buildings and giving himself glory. And at this point, he decides that on a New Year's Eve party, he's going to make sure that he toasts his Ciroc. He's going to toast his Macallan by using sacred vessels. And the extremities, just the digits of a man's hand, come on the wall and write a message that Belshazzar in his language could read, but in its interpretation, he couldn't understand. Daniel, being a marketplace master that has ministry components, can not only read it, but he can interpret it so that Belshazzar can understand the difference. Belshazzar has credibility with Daniel because when Daniel talks about polling, when he talks about voting, when he talks about community development, when he talks about economic empowerment, he can make it fit Belshazzar because Belshazzar doesn't understand those components. But Daniel speaks in tongues in the government to make Belshazzar understand practical principles that he wouldn't get without Daniel. And then Daniel is able to use his spiritual dynamic of speaking in tongues only, get this, because he's been credible with his marketplace dynamic of speaking in tongues. Once he's done it effective in the marketplace, it opens up a spiritual or ministry component. Without the marketplace, he doesn't get credit and credibility in ministry. And many of us miss the fact that Jesus's whole template for his disciples was that you cannot become an apostle or a preacher if you haven't been a marketplace master, if you've not learned how to have an effective fishing business, if you don't have an effective medical practice, if you don't have an effective accounting firm, If you don't know how to deal with the people in the marketplace, there is no way you're going to deal with the people in ministry. So you got to know how to speak both languages so that you can translate what I'm saying to the people that you've already been called to and have credibility with.
Yes, sir. That is good. That is good.
Oh, that
I
is
want
so
to,
good.
yeah, I want to share one last thing. I want to hear what Myron has to say, and then Kervance, you'll give us the closing words for the day. Just thinking about this whole concept of understanding your market and how to speak in that particular market and the fear of targeting that particular market. I am a living example of the fear of really tapping into your target market because I had to go through that. I came from a tradition that completely rejected everything that I did because the tradition I came from, when God revealed it to me, that wasn't my market. And that is scary. That's scary when you really accept your purpose in life, who God created you to be. Sometimes God purposes you for people you don't know. Sometimes God puts you in a position to bless people you've never encountered. And what is that like when everybody you know rejects what God has created you to be? That's a fearful place to be in. I couldn't do holy smokes if I tried to hold on to my tradition because God called me to a market. I couldn't have planted the faith community if I tried to hold on to my tradition because God called me to a market. So a lot of times people see what I do in ministry and they assume that what I'm doing is to simply make people in my tradition uncomfortable. I don't care about making people in my tradition uncomfortable because the people in my tradition are not my target market. It's the unchurched, the underchurched, and the overchurched who are the people that God has called me to minister to. And if I allow the fear of rejection, the fear of ridicule, the fear of gossip to keep me from doing what God has called me to do, we wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation right now. We just wouldn't, because I'd be in the pulpit creatively regurgitating everything that I've heard throughout the course of my life. And God called me to do something different. I'm not saying God called me to do something like do more. No, God called me to do something different. And all of us need to get the business in the Bible so that we can understand that when God calls us to a market, we just need to go at it because that is what God has called us to do. And don't worry about the people who won't like it and just move forward. So that's my thought. And sometimes, you got to speak in an unknown tongue to get that done. Sometimes you just have to do that. So Myron, I want to hear your final thoughts, and then Kervance, you give us the final word, and we're gonna wrap this up.
Yeah, there's so many thoughts here. I want to do one thing, but I'm gonna go this way just because of what you just said, Christian, about sometimes you are called to minister to a group that does not look like the traditional group that you have come from and are part of, and that's the ministry of Jesus. That's the pattern of Jesus, because if you think about it, Jesus was the ultimate disruptor. The writer of the book of John says that he came unto his own, and his own received him not. But such gave ye power to become sons of God. So when his own did not receive him, then Jesus was able to minister to his target market and minister to the people that he came to reach and the people that he came to touch, right? He even said things like this. He said that the well don't need a doctor. So he was saying, listen,
Yeah.
I know these folks, but that's not who I'm here to touch and who I'm here to tug on. So sometimes disruption is how our ministry works and how our ministry looks. And this is the last thing I'll say to that point of speaking in tongues. That ministered to me so much because I put all my stock in. I'm a Baptist, right? Into the ecstatic experience of speaking in tongues, right? That glossolalia is the word in the Greek, which means the ecstatic experience of speaking in tongues. Paul says, I speak them the tongues of men and I speak the tongues of angels. The tongues of angels is called glossolalia. But then there's another term that we've neglected. And Kingmaker, you referenced both terms. I'm going to give the other term now, and that's called xenoglossolalia, which is what we see in Acts chapter 3, when they come down from the upper room filled with the power of the Holy Spirit, and they begin to speak in other tongues, and men begin to hear the gospel in their language. That sometimes the gift of the Spirit is not for you to speak in the tongues of angels, but it's for you to speak in the tongues of men, so that ultimately you can minister to them and meet them right where they are. And so that's why this book and this whole session has blessed me, because we need to realize that the Bible is not just a spiritual document, but it's a business plan. And it shows us how to meet men right where we are, meet women, meet humanity, I should say, right where they are.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's good. That's good. Kingmaker, close us out, man. What you got?
Man, I'm going to start in where I started. Thank you so much, Christian and the faith community, along with Holy Smokes, for highlighting my book. I'm honored. Those of you who purchase a copy of the book from the kingmakersclub.com, I'm sharing still today half of the proceeds with the faith community. And this concept for me is real easy. Anybody that knows me knows that I'm brand loyal. My mom worked for Coca-Cola for 38 years. And to this day, I've never tasted a Pepsi. I have no desire because I'm a loyalist. And one of the
Hey, man.
yes.
Hold up, you put too much emphasis. You know you don't say Coca-Cola. You say Coca-Cola.
No, I'm going to do it the proper way. It's a Coca-Cola.
No, Doc. Say it how you say it. Coca-Cola.
I've never had a Pepsi. I'm from Atlanta. All I'm drinking is Coca-Cola. And this reality helped me become it helped me to become loyal. I am a Apple fan. I'm talking to you from a MacBook. I have an iPad that I'm looking at for our online viewers, and I have an iPhone. And the biggest piece of this by far that changed me from a BlackBerry user to an iPhone user was the said device. And what was important about this is I have to admit that the camera by the other phone company is better than the iPhone. But my reason is not simply because of the camera. It's the unique way that iPhones and Apple always put themselves out of business for the sake of reestablishing themselves for the next generation. It's not just the next generation of people. They're focused on the next generation of technology. So let me explain this. The strategy that they use is real simple. They believe that they will never become affixed on the last model. Their issues and the necessary fixes that are required to be upgraded, if not upgraded, slow down or threaten the speed and the success of the current device. And they are immediately providing the necessary updates to all their users. This update is provided no matter what version of the phone you have. Interestingly, though, to receive the download, you've got to put yourself in a position that the download gives you an upgrade. But the only way you can get the download to get the upgrade is you've got to be plugged in to the main power source from an organizational platform called iTunes. In some cases, even if this is done without enough power or battery life, it is impossible for you to obtain new information. What are you saying? The impetus behind this book was because every so often an update is required for us to do what the hymn says, to serve the present age properly and engage the device known as the Bible. And the smartphone is not the functional or not that functional when it's not relevant to the users of the current generation. And many of us in church can't fix the bugs because we are not receptive to the new downloads. And the business in the Bible aids us in avoiding the clear opportunity to miss the reach of the next generation because we're currently so accustomed to the old model. And it's my hope that the church will plug into the source, receive the download, get the upgrade, and be comfortable reaching the generation that they've been called to. If you're still operating as the old iPhone, what you don't realize is that you're out of date. You have no updates available. Your phone is moving too slow, and people don't want your product. If you just simply be comfortable not being married to the issues of the prior age, becoming a widow to your former mindset, it is possible that you can marry the next generation. And ultimately, you'll be able to do what a charge to keep I have says. I'll serve this present age. You know why? It's my calling that I've got to fulfill.
Help us in here, Holy Ghost.
Can we get some air horns?
Jesus, please. My God in heaven.
He has put so much pressure on me. So the next episode is about breaking all the rules. It's my first book. I don't think I'm ready. I need to sit down with my book and go through it and see if I have anything as insightful to say as what the Kingmaker has said tonight.
God, that was grand. A charge to keep I have. He was yanking chains tonight.
Don't start.
He was
Don't
yanking
start.
chains tonight.
Do not start with the chains, okay? Do not start. Shout out to everybody listening on the podcast platforms, from Apple iTunes to Spotify to Google Podcast. Everybody, shout out to those who are listening on Fam Radio. Thank you so much to our virtual audience and all of our patrons on Patreon. Listen, if you want to be a part of our live virtual audience, join us over on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/TFCATL, and you can be a part of the live virtual audience. And hey, maybe we'll answer your questions live and in action during the show. You never know what might happen. Also, follow us on Instagram. It's at Holy Smokes Movement. And then you got to join our Facebook group. If you're on Facebook, just search Holy Smokes, Cigars and Spirituality. Next time we come back, we're going to be right here. We're doing Breaking All the Rules as our next topic. That's my first book that I'm really excited about. So I can't wait to hear what everybody has to share about that. And hopefully I'll be able to write me a good message to try to match what the Kingmaker has done tonight. I hadn't planned on doing all that, but now the challenge has been made, and I'm gonna get to writing, so I won't be showed up on my own show.
All you gotta do is pull out that chain, and most of your power will come to you, Doc. God has already given you power, Doc. Just use your chain, Doc.
Chain of fool, yeah. Chain.
Yo, shout out to everybody. We love y'all. This is Holy Smoke, Cigars and Spirituality. We'll see you next time right here. Peace out.
Bye, folks.